Well, of course, everyone is looking at climate change. Everyone knows that it is a huge issue. But what happens if your country is very much at risk of what's going on? For example, rising sea levels. I've got the Deputy Prime Minister of Mauritius with me, Stephen Obigadou, and Minister for Tourism. Thank you so much for joining me. You're live on World Business Report right across the world. Now, your energy and climate change minister was talking about rising sea levels. Just what kind of risk do rising sea levels pose for a country like yours?
Mauritius is a republic made up of a number of islands, and of course, global warming means rising sea levels. So yes, we're directly impacted, and the outcome of the COP27 is of critical importance to us.
Okay, now looking at some of the numbers behind your economy, about 20% of the overall economy is reliant on tourism. What happens when sea levels start to rise and that starts to threaten the livelihoods of people within your republic?
Well, absolutely. That's why we need to take action both at local level while contributing to global effort. Now, we are very actively involved in a project we call the Sustainable Island Project, working with international partners to sensitize people to climate change and get our tourism industry to transition to a greener and more and to be more effective in combating climate change, banning plastics, reusable products, and most importantly, protecting our shores to the extent possible from the rising waters.
Okay, now of course, even islands don't exist in isolation, of course. When people are flying over to you, there are huge carbon emissions associated with the airline industry as such. Do you speak to the airlines? Is that something that you think about when you're thinking about sort of the wider climate involvement of tourism?
Absolutely. I think we're living through very challenging times, and the COVID brought tourism to a standstill, and now building back, we know that we've got to build back greener, and we're very attentive to what needs to be done and what tourists are telling us and what the local population is telling us in terms of making sure that when we invite tourists to take a long-haul flight to come to Mauritius, they are also contributing in a way to fighting climate change. So we're talking to airlines, following very closely the efforts to develop fuel that is less damaging to the environment, and to ensure that when tourists do come to Mauritius, what they do, how they live in Mauritius, does not add to the carbon footprint that tourism leaves on the global ecological landscape.
Now, you mentioned there the pandemic, and of course that had a significant impact on tourism right across the world. How has the country bounced back? And, are you sort of feeling a secondary hit now because of the cost of living crisis?
As you know, Mauritius is highly demanded as a tourist destination. And before COVID, with a population of 1.3 million, we actually had 1.4 million tourists a year, just to tell you how important tourism is to us. And we had nearly 20 months during which our borders were closed. We had 2 lockdowns, and as a result, we have been one of the most heavily impacted countries in the world. We've had the worst recession in recorded economic history, with a contraction of our economy of about 15%. So that was a terrible impact. But since we reopened, we've experienced strong and steady growth, and right now, month of October, we've had a recovery rate of 90%. So we're nearly where we stood in terms of tourist arrivals in 2019. And for instance, the UK market is a growth market. We've actually, since July, been attracting more tourists from the UK than was the case prior to COVID.
Oh, that's interesting. Now, it's seen as quite, certainly within the UK traveller market, it's seen as a luxury destination, perhaps people going on honeymoon, that kind of thing. But, right across the board, we're seeing a collapse in demand for luxury spending and for discretionary spending. I mean, how worried are you about about bookings in the future, and whether or not people are going to sort of defer things like big ticket items like, a lovely 5-star holiday in Mauritius?
Not worried in the short term. I think Mauritius is quite a special destination. We're known for our natural and unequaled natural beauty, our lagoons and our beaches, but also very high standards of excellence in our hotel industry, a multicultural, educated population that's very welcoming to foreigners. We're islanders after all, and most importantly, I believe that we have drawn the lessons from COVID in terms of resilience, in terms of flexibility. And as we build back, we want a tourism industry that's greener, even more equitable, and we're diversifying the product to emphasize other possibilities beyond the sun, sea, and beaches that Mauritius is very well known for in terms of inland tourism, hiking, historical and cultural tourism. So things are looking very good in the short term, right up to beginning of 2023. I think we're going to be back to the pre-COVID figures very soon. Significantly, tourists are staying longer and spending more. So the signs are good, but we're very alive to the challenges and risks further ahead. But that is what COVID has taught us, to be resilient and to be flexible, to anticipate the worst and prepare to build back better.
Stephen Abogadu, thank you very much for your time. Thank you.